Oh, I definitely have favorite characters, but I wouldn't say that I've got a favorite one in Ghost in the Shell. Ghost in the Shell was one of the first gigs that I did after being out of the business a couple of years. And I returned, because I started originally in 1985 in the business. And then I was away from the business for a little bit, and I came back, and that was like one of the first things that I did, and you know, getting back into my acting chops, getting back into retraining, getting all that going, and the first thing they tell me is, yeah, we've got a couple of roles back here that we'd like you to fill in for. But they need utility players, guys who do a lot of the non-major characters, but background characters that run throughout the show. They need a couple of actors who are very good at completely changing their voices. Just jump in there and do this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, and you don't know they're all like the same two, you know, guy and gal doing them all, right? And this was one of those cases where it was like, hey, we know you're getting back into it, so we'd like to bring you in as a utility player. You know, we know you're a multi-voiced actor, so we're gonna throw a lot of stuff at you. And the very first thing was a guy who was threatening to shoot himself, that this cop has to talk down. So here I am getting into one of my first acting gigs in a couple of years, having to play this guy who's emotionally distraught. You know, so it was basically just being tossed in the deep end.
Nice.
And it was actually the best thing that could have happened, because if I started light with you know, smaller things, and then, well, I'm gonna work my way back up so I feel, you know, get that confidence all back in. Being thrown into the deep end and getting that out of the way and like, yep, I'm back, baby. So that's really, when I think of Ghost in the Shell, that's the experience I think of. Okay. I think of how it was like, that was a thing that just, you know, go. And like, yep, I'm back.
Nice.
Well, there's a couple of things. One is my great love of great works of imagination. It's like, I don't know if you know, Tim Russ, who played Commander Tuvok in Star Trek Voyager. He says all the time, you know, how it was just pure joy for him because he basically considers himself a geek who made it. That's me. You know, I grew up on Star Trek. I grew up on Twilight Zone and the works of Ray Bradbury and just and on and on and on and on. Comic books, movies. Loved, you know, Planet of the Apes. Saw the original Star Wars in the theaters something like 24 times when it came out. It's just like, I have all my life loved sci-fi, horror, fantasy, animation, and so on. And I knew that I wanted to not just be a part of this industry, but I wanted to be a part of the fantasy storytelling element of this industry. I wanted to be a part of, again, great works of imagination. It was just trying to figure out where I was going to fit in. Plus, I've always loved performing. I did plays all through high school. When I could, I got into classes at the Groundlings, doing comedy improv. I was training under the great Judith Weston in Meisner acting technique. I love performing, so it was just, let me see if I could meld those two things together.
Okay.
You know, and so my love of animation, my love of acting, my love of character work, it all seemed like that was where to go. That was the best thing. The question was getting in. I was working when I first broke in 1985. I was working for a company doing Foley walking, and if you don't know what Foley walking is, that's where you basically do background sound effects. Like if two people are walking, they're gonna mic the two people, but they're not gonna mic their footsteps because they need the dialogue clean. That means someone else has to actually put in those footsteps. And you know, it's gonna cost a bundle to pay a sound effects editor with shoe sound effects to match each little step. It's easier to have someone on a stage, what we call a Foley stage, just all these different surfaces, you know, concrete, wood, all these different things. These bins that have a lot of video and audio tape that when you walk on it sounds like grass, all of these things, who's watching the screen and is actually, I hope I'm not off camera here, who's actually watching the screen and walking as the person, and okay, he steps to concrete, and now they're going to the grass, and we're doing this, and we got this big box full of shoes, right? All kinds of different shoes, different types of soles, and usually you and a partner, like if two people are having a fight, I'll be like, okay, I'll be the guy with the arrow, you be the guy with the catcher's mitt, and I'll be in front of the mic and do the, and he's doing the, right, for the punch.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
so it's like, right? That's a guy with an arrow and a dude with a catcher's mitt, So I was working on a movie being directed by Steve Miner. It was a film called House, made in 1985, starring William Catt, Richard Mull. Great classic horror comedy. If you haven't seen it, you should.
Okay.
Scary, really funny. And there's this little creature they call the Little Critters, and there's a scene where he's supposed to be laughing outside the store, and they didn't have anything recorded for it. Prior to that, we were doing this thing with this blonde walking in this backyard in high heels. So that's actually me in the high heels, right, doing the walking. And they go to the scene with the Little Critters, and the director realizes they don't have anybody to do this evil creature laugh. And I just blurted out, and the director says, you in the heels. Do that again. And that's how my voiceover career began.
Oh man, nice.
And then I just kept doing background voices and things and just worked my way on up to where I am today. No, I loved Batman the Animated Series. In fact, my late wife was in it in several episodes. She played Barbara Gordon in a number of episodes, and also played Barbara Gordon in the movie Batman Sub-Zero.
Okay.
So for me, this was very much kind of a coming full circle kind of thing. And in case you're wondering, by the way, I am remarried. So I married my old high school sweetheart.
Nice.
And we now have a 9-year-old son who is now also a voice actor and is doing brilliantly.
Awesome.
So life is wonderful.
Awesome, man.
When I had a chance, when the agent had sent the auditions for Arkham Asylum, I jumped all over it. It was just like, wow, this is an amazing thing, and I was really hoping to get Scarecrow, Joker, any of those, because they had not made a deal with Mark Hamill yet. So I had also auditioned for Joker. These characters are legendary. They are legendary, and I've been a fan of Batman ever since Gene Colan took over the comic in the 80s. Gene Colan did Tomb of Dracula for Marvel and all these other very atmospheric horror-based things in Marvel, and I was a big fan of horror comics. I loved creepy, eerie, Tomb of Dracula, so on. But when Gene Colan went from Marvel to DC and took over Batman, and it became this very atmospheric thing, it was like, ooh. And that's when I became a fan. So this was something I really, really wanted. And I just tried to put as much of my own spin on it as possible, kind of dividing the characters between Crane and Scarecrow, one being a monster and one being a person who doesn't consider himself equal, just smarter than you, and when I got the call that I had gotten the part, it was just, this was joy, this was wonderful. It's like, wow, dream come true.
Cool, man.
It was amazing, absolutely amazing. The reason is that, I don't know if you're familiar with, there was a great voice actress by the name of Mary Kay Bergman. She had done over 30 animated series, 20 animated feature films. She passed in November of 1999. She was, at the time, the Hollywood Reporter had listed her as one of the top 5 people in the field of animation. She was, for 10 years, the voice of Snow White for the Disney Company. She created all the female voices in South Park. She was a force of nature. And at the time when she passed in November of '99, we had been married for 10 years. So I had not only lost my wife, I had lost my best friend. And I was just non-functional for a number of years.
I understand.
And we had also tried to pursue independent filmmaking together. And one of the things that she had always wanted me to do was return to performing, return to being an actor. And I thought, you know what, she was right. And so that's what I did. And in the meantime, I do a lot of advocacy for mental health support for people who are suffering from anxiety, depression, and so on, so that they don't suffer the way my wife silently suffered and ended her own life. So if you're out there and you're suffering from depression, anxiety, any of those things, and you feel that no one will understand what you're going through, it's not true. There are people who understand, there are people who want to help, and we will help you. This world is much better with you in it than without you. So take my word for it.
Sorry for your loss, man. I'm sorry.
You know, if somebody can hear this story and learn from it and save themselves, then it's good. This is a great reason for you to interview me. Just help get that word out. You can go to Wikipedia and look up suicide prevention hotlines and find hotlines all over the globe for teens, for adults, LGBTQ, trans lines, veterans lines. I'm the son of a veteran. And again, you do not have to suffer in silence. People do know what you're going through. You know, reach out. We want to help you save your life.